Welcome all. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Selenium interview questions. That is, how can we implement data-driven testing for building data-driven framework using TestNG? Let me answer. In TestNG, we have an annotation known as @data provider annotation. And also, there is a predefined attribute in TestNG known as data provider attributes. Using this data provider annotation and attribute of TestNG, we can implement data-driven testing for building a data-driven framework using TestNG. Guys. Now let me practically show you how to use this annotation and attribute. So here there is a sample project, and under this project I'm going to create a new class, guys. I'll name this class as DD demo, data-driven demo. Click on finish. You can give any name here, guys. I'm just giving some random name. And inside this class, I'll create a test method. TestNG test method I need to create. Public void. First of all, I'll create a normal method. Public void, say test login. It's a normal method, right? I'll convert this normal method into a TestNG test method by providing this @test TestNG annotation. Over the mouse on @test and import this test from TestNG. Done. Let's say this particular method receives username and password. Okay. So we can supply the data to this test login, some sample method, that is test login method. We can pass username and password to this method. Fine. Inside this method, I'll write a normal print statement for demoing purpose. So user has logged in using username plus whatever the username that this particular method has received, and password, whatever the password that this particular test method has received. Okay, this is the test method, guys. Okay, which when executed, what will happen, guys? When you run this test method, what will happen? It will print out user has logged in using username, whatever the username that is passed, and password using whatever the password that is passed. That's what will happen. Now, I want to supply multiple sets of data to this test method. Okay, I want to data-driven testing. That means you can supply. I want to supply multiple sets of data to the above test method. To this test method, I want to supply multiple sets of data. That is multiple sets of username and password I want to pass. So every time you pass a username and password, this particular test method will be run, right? It will be executed. Let's say you are passing three sets of data. Okay, let's say you are passing three sets of data to this TestNG test method. So this test method will run how many times? When you pass three sets of data, this test method will run three times, guys, because you are passing multiple sets of data, that is three sets of data, three times it will run, guys. That is known as data driven testing, guys. And we have to implement data driven testing for building the data driven framework. Fine. Anyhow, let's apply the multiple sets of data to this TestNG test method. How to do that? For that, I'll create a method which will supply the data. Public void, you can give some random name, guys. Okay, data supplier method, anything, any name you can give here. I'm just giving data supplier method. So I will annotate this particular method. Okay, this method will supply the data to this test method. Okay, for supplying the data, we have to use which annotation of TestNG? @data provider annotation. I explained right here. We are going to use data provider annotation and data provider attribute of TestNG for getting this done. Firstly, I'm using @data provider annotation of TestNG before the method which is going to supply the data to the test method. Over the mouse, import this data provider and put some circular brackets here, guys, and name this method. Okay, name this data provider. Instead of the method name, we'll be using this name for connecting to the test. So name is equal to dsm, I'll say. Okay, dsm, data supplier method. I'm giving the short form of this method. Any name you can give, guys. Okay, I'm just giving dsm. Now here, inside this data provider method, that is which is going to supply the data, right? This particular method, we have to supply the data. I'll create an object for the two-dimensional object array. So and you'll say data is equal to, okay, data is equal to object data is equal to, I'll just provide three sets of data. Let's say I want to supply three sets of data from here. So here I will provide three sets of data. So this is going to the first set of data. This is going to the second set of data. This is going to the third set of data. Inside this, I'll pass username and password, guys. Okay. Username, let's say, is Arun. For the first set of data, username is Arun and password is 123. This is the first set of data that I'm going to pass to this test method. Second set of data I want to pass is, here I will say Varun and 456. Second set of data. This is the second set of data. And third set of data is Tarun and I will say 789. Done. I'll this method will return this data. This method will supply the data to the TestNG test method. So that's why I'm saying return data, and I will change the return type here to object array, two-dimensional object array. Okay, done. The data provider method is now ready to supply the data. Fine. Now this data will be supplied to the test method only when you connect the dots. Okay, you have to connect this test method, TestNG test method, to this data provider. Then only the data provider is going to supply the data to this test method. So how to connect? You have to put circular brackets beside @test and say data provider. Who is the data provider for this test method? We have to provide the name. What is the name of the data provider here? DSM. Copy this and paste it here. Okay, data provider is called DSM. That means this data provider method is going to supply the data to this test method. Now this is done, guys. Okay, we have used @data provider annotation and data provider attribute of TestNG for implementing this data driven testing for building the data driven framework. Fine. Now let me run this code. How many times this test method will run, guys? 3 times, because this data provider is supplying 3 sets of data. First set of data, second set of data, and third set of data. So this will run 3 times. Now let me run. Right click, run as TestNG test. 3 times the test method will run, guys. You see, test login method has run how many times? 1, 2, 3. First time it has run using the first set of data, that is Arun 123. Arun is the username and 123 is the password. The second time when the test login method has run, it has run using the credentials Varun and 456. Third time Tarun and 789. In the output you can see, user has logged in using username Arun and password 123 will be printed. User has logged in using the username Varun and password 456 will be printed. User has logged in using username Tarun and password for 789 will be printed. So hope, guys, you got the answer for this interview question. So that's it, guys. Thank you. Bye.